let's do a bike check of the weird bike. I've been waiting to do this one for a while. I've had the bike for, I don't know, a year and a half now, something like that. And I haven't really ever, it's been in the background of some stuff, but you haven't ever really had the walkthrough of it. And it's super duper duper weird and comes with a story. So let's get into it. This is, let's see if I can get back here. This is the weird bike. Okay. It's a lot to take in. Yeah, we'll, we'll start here. We'll start with just like some basic stuff here. This is a fillet brazed steel frame made by Concept Engineering, which is a one-man shop who doesn't really build bikes much anymore. He's an engineer by trade, but he did for a number of years. And this is one of his. So again, his own design, his own build. Obviously, there's not a lot of other bikes like this one. They were all fully custom. This particular bike is, as you might tell, a soft ride beam bike. If you are unfamiliar with soft ride beams, they've been out of production for, I think, about 10 years now. But basically, this is a carbon fiber top with a elastomer layer and a carbon fiber bottom. And as a result, with this beam cantilevered the way it is, it's only attached to these 2 points here, and seat height adjustment is via this bolt. There's a slider here. This entire beam is a sprung member. So this bike actually has like literally a couple of inches of suspension travel at the seat. There's a couple things about that I should say are interesting. These things were super duper duper polarizing. Some people really loved them. Triathletes loved them. Tandem stokers, that's the rear rider on a tandem, used to love these things. So these things had a very serious cult following. They're extremely comfortable. They are somewhat prone to not just vertical movement, but a little bit of side-to-side movement if you're not smooth on your pedal stroke. Not a problem for yours truly with my impeccable technique. Yeah, they're really interesting. They're one of those things that I think was probably before their time, in some ways. I think actually like a soft ride beam bike, as like a proper gravel bike would be a really interesting build. Couple things that are interesting. Seat height is adjusted here, so the whole beam like right, via this bolt here that's slotted and all of that. And then it has a single anchor point up here with a pin through it. The beam itself, obviously it compresses when you load it, particularly with as much weight as I weigh. So you can't run your standard seat to bottom bracket height. You actually have to raise the seat quite a bit higher to account for sag in the system when you actually put your body weight on it. And because it sags like this, like it levers down, you actually have to nose down the seat a bit, because when the seat goes down with your weight on it, it will actually flatten out. And if you start with it flat up here, you'll actually end up with it like nosed up in a god-awful uncomfortable position. So that's the first thing about the bike. It's a beam bike, which is kind of neat. It also has one S&S coupler here in the middle of the bike. So the entire bike will break into two pieces. This entire front green triangle bit, and then this entire back green triangle bit. And the entire thing will fit in a regular size suitcase that you could fly with, wheels and all, so that you can fly with this thing without incurring additional bike costs on it, which is super duper rad. Normally, when you do beam bikes like this, you have an S&S here on the top tube, and then on a conventional down tube, you park another one on here somewhere. Usually it's like here and here. And the thing comes apart. For whatever reason, he decided to do this with one S&S coupler. It's a huge one, but one. And there are two conflicting schools of thought on this. Some people say, oh, well, S&S says that you shouldn't ever have the front and back half of the bikes connected by a single coupler like this, because if there's twisting across this, like torsional twisting across this fitting could loosen and the bike could fall apart while you're riding it and kill you. Which, I mean, fair point, right? Except they also say that if there is a structural member of the bike across a monotube arrangement like this, that's totally okay, because that will mitigate any of the twisting torsional forces. Well, that soft ride beam is a structural member across that to mitigate those forces. So the engineer who built this' view and my view is that this is probably okay. Like all S&S bikes, you're going to want to check the couplings once in a while to make sure that nothing has loosened up on you and whatnot. All right, enough of that. Next thing you should know about the bike. Well, we'll talk about the frame for just 1 second. It actually has 2 water bottle mount positions. One here under the beam on the top tube, I guess, and then another one down here on the down tube. You can see the bosses here and here. I will be the first person to say neither of those are particularly ideal for getting to or holding large quantities of water on this bike. So I might be investigating some other ways to carry drinks while I ride said bike. Next, that's a Reynolds Uzo Pro carbon fork. So carbon, 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 carbon. Obviously it's got a pretty uncut steer. When I got the bike, the stem was actually like way higher up here. I am still dialing in the correct stack height and reach lengths. I mean, one of the cool things about a soft ride beam, right, is because you could slide the seating bracket back and forth on this bit here. You can actually change your effective seat tube angle. So I really need to get this thing on the ground with air in the tires and whatnot, and hang some plumb lines off it and do some measurements to see if I can get this thing, the fit on this thing actually dialed in the way it really should be. So right now it is not necessarily there, and I'm reluctant to cut anything and tidy it up until I'm sure. Next bit, it's got FSA carbon drop bars that have rise in them and have like these annoying super flat. I know these are very voguey to have really big flat uppers on these. I'm not really super into that. Certainly not with this handlebar tape job. I might have to redo that. The ancient cat eye computer on here. Internal routing for the brakes through the handlebar. Again, okay. This is Dura-Ace, and it is Dura-Ace 9-speed. And I've heard some people bitch about Dura-Ace 9-speed. You know, oh, it's clunky and blah, 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 whatever. I don't think I've ever had trouble with Shimano 9-speed stuff, just generally speaking, let alone Dura-Ace. So, to that. What else? I was a little surprised that on a bike with full Dura-Ace that has Ultegra calipers, but then I realized I think they made, going way back, I think they made Ultegra long reach calipers. And that's an awful lot of space. This tire is uninflated, obviously, and it is a paltry 23 centimeter tire. But I am reasonably sure you could hork a 28 through there without any particular problem, and probably larger than that. You might be able to get a 32 on this bike, which would be kind of neat. Ditto on the back of the bike. It's got oodles and noodles of clearance back here. It's got a braze-on here, I think for either a rack or fenders. It's got a chain peg, which is a nice touch. It's got mounts down here, I think, again, either for rack or for fenders. It's got another mount down here on that. That's definitely fenders. So, like, this bike was meant to be set up to be ridden, you know, in sort of like whatever conditions. I would not have called this a race bike. This is more like an endurance bike. But we got full Dura-Ace on here. That's a Dura-Ace 9-speed triple crankset. So in the days before wide range cassettes, you would run a triple on the front of these, and they made high-end triples. So like a lot of road bikes at the time, that's a 5339, which would be a regular road double back in the day. And then they've put a 30 on the inside of this as well. So this bike is probably running like a 1127 on the back, 1126 in the back. So you've actually got a reasonably low bailout gear on the thing. That said, 9-speed Shimano mountain and road, totally cross-compatible. So if you wanted, you could throw an XTR on the back of here if you wanted to keep it, you know, flashy. XTR 9-speed on the back, 1132 on here, and then you could get well below 1-to-1 for your low gear and still have all of the range in the entire world. The wheels on the bike are Mavic Cerium SLs, which were really nice wheels. They still roll really nicely. I'm super familiar with them. You do have to rebuild the free hub bodies on these from time to time, based on the Paul design, because you get shmoo in there and they stop behaving as they should. But that's something I am, let's say, intimately familiar with the process of doing. I've got it. I don't even have to take the cassette off anymore to do it. You can just pop the whole thing apart, cassette on it and all, clean everything, lube the Pauls, slap the thing back together. Bob's your uncle. It's like a 10-minute job tops. Super duper duper easy. So yeah, anyway, I think that's the salient features of the bike, right? It's a bike. It's got some Ritchie WCS stuff on it. Okay. That saddle is atrocious, but I got my eye on a saddle for this bike. Yeah, I'll probably swap that god-awful water bottle cage off the thing at some point. Carbon fiber piece of junk. Look at this. Look. Ugh. I mean, it's just, ugh. But fear not, I've got a bunch of Ron King cages in the garage that I could totally slap on that thing and have double caged up and all that. I will probably, this is the tires that came with it. They're 23s. Again, I came up riding road bikes in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. And so 23s feel real normal to me, but I am working to be responsive to the times. And so I will probably slap some like 28s or 30s or 32s or something on there, and go cruise on this thing. I think for long rides, it'll be really nice. Oh, sorry. This is another thing I forgot to mention about this bike. It's got this crazy, I don't know if you can tell in this light, it's got this crazy color shifting paint. Yeah, this used to be called like chameleon paint. See how it shifts from like purple to green and all of that? That was really expensive paint. And this is actually a legitimate, let's see if I can get you a shot here. This is actually like a legitimate Joe Bell paint job. So this is like listen, I like nice things on bikes, but this is a horrifyingly expensive paint job on a bike. This is like an eye-watering paint job back in the day. And impeccable. So yeah, and I bought this, I should say, I saw this bike chained to someone's mailbox on the side of the road with a for sale sign on it. And I bought it from the guy for very little money. And yeah, I had no intent, like all bike stories begin with, I had no intention of getting another bike. But I really didn't. I wasn't, certainly not another road bike. But here we are, man. It is, I've ridden it a number of times. It has good manners. I like it. Obviously, the beam bike is not for everybody, and that's okay. I understand that the aesthetics of this bike may not be for everybody, and that's okay. I get it. I've talked to the guy who built the bike. He's a very nice gentleman. He has built some really cool bikes over the years. I'm trying to get this thing. It's all anyway. Yeah, it is. It's way more fun than it should be. I'll tell you that. I'm not super stoked on the. Not super duper duper stoked on the triple. And I'm sort of tempted to sell that triple crankset and get myself a double crankset for the bike, like a Dura Ace of that era. This crankset in a double, because the triples are actually kind of hard to find and somewhat desirable for people, particularly that third ring. So part of me would love to get like a double chainring on there, and then put a wide range 9-speed chain cassette on the back and get like a nice wide gear range. And I think with the right tires and that gearing setup, man, this could be a rad D2R2 bike to do like a really long endurance event with a lot of climbing. This could be a super duper duper cool bike to do that with. So yeah, anyway, there it is, man. What I affectionately, and I believe me when I say it, I affectionately call this my weird bike, because it is weird, but it's also like really fun. And if I traveled more and needed to fly with a bike, boy, would I be psyched about having an SNS bike. Even, I don't know if you saw, even the cables. First of all, it's got the nice cables. These are the black, like, coated ones. And it's got quick releases on the cable. So when you take the entire bike apart, you don't have to readjust your gearing. It's very, very well thought out. It needs a couple of things. Tires, water bottle cages, a saddle, a bunch of measuring for fit. And then last thing is it's got this stupid kink in the derailleur housing for the back end here. So yeah, I'll need to fix that. But again, all super duper easy stuff. So there you go. N+1 being what it is, you end up with a weird road bike, and you find yourself actually sort of enjoying it. And when I bought it, I figured like worst case. Honestly, I was driving by at like 40 miles an hour in a car, coming home with my wife from getting groceries, and I spotted this thing. And what I spotted was actually the Dura Ace cranks. For whatever reason, at 40 miles an hour out of the corner of my eye, I can identify those. And so like I pulled over and bought it. And I figured that for the price that he was asking, I could sell off any of the parts of the bike and come out of it on top. But as it turns out, I've been really reluctant to part the thing out because I actually enjoy riding it as it is, strange as it looks. And what's not more fun than a bike that's a conversation starter? So anyway, that's a bike check on the Weird Bike. I hope you enjoy it. We have not yet exhausted my fleet of bike checks, so you can look for more of these occasionally coming. I don't like them doing them too often because they're never the most popular videos, but I do get questions about bikes, and they're a way of sort of like wrapping up some of that or sharing oddball stuff that you might not have ever seen before. So there you go. All right.